This conference will now be recorded.
So that's how we'll go to begin with, and then from there we'll go on. And Nazir, I know that specifically what's on your mind are questions for Len about glucosteroids and the dosage with Zytiga. And Len, until this morning when we spoke, Nazir and I, for a while, I always thought the Latitude trial approved with 10 milligrams, but it didn't. It approved with 5 milligrams, which...
Actually, I thought it was approved for 5 milligrams twice a day. But I have noticed a trend that people seem to be talking now more about 5 milligrams once a day. So maybe they scaled back on the prednisone, thinking that you didn't need the full 10 milligrams.
Well, that's what I thought, but I looked up the trial this morning, and it was 5 milligrams once a day.
Well, I can recall when I was first put on Zytiga, January 2017, I was taking 5 milligrams twice a day, and that's what the bottle said.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the trial protocol for Latitude, which was what the FDA approved it with.
Right. I thought it was, okay, you looked it up. Well, maybe what I'm thinking is the FDA approval monograph, like the patient prescribing information.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I reviewed that not too long ago, and because the second time I was on Zytiga briefly, it was only 5 milligrams once a day. So I said, first time I was taking 5 milligrams twice a day. So I looked up the FDA approved monograph, and unless I don't recall correctly, I thought it said 5 milligrams twice a day. In any case, the trend now seems to be 5 milligrams once a day.
That's what I'm taking, Len.
Yeah.
I'm doing 5 milligrams.
Once a day.
Yes, sir.
So Nazir, why don't you tell folks what you're doing? And also, I should add that Nazir, when he did chemo, had some pretty nasty side effects from taking the steroids. So, Nazir, fill folks in.
Beg your pardon?
Fill the rest of the group in. Tell them a little bit about your disease and where you're at and what the issue is with these steroids now.
I have prostate cancer. That's the first thing. Second, I've had radiation, then chemotherapy, and something else in between. And now they have put me on Zytiga and Prednisone. 3 days ago, I started Zytiga, 1,000 milligrams in the morning, and then 1 hour later, 10 milligrams of prednisone. What I just wanted to ask, what do I do? This question is for Len. What do I do to insomnia has been introduced because of these two drugs. I don't know which one is causing. I haven't been able to properly sleep for the last 3 days. I don't feel sleepy.
You have not been able to sleep?
Yes, because
yes, prednisone can definitely give you insomnia.
Yes. What do I do to overcome that insomnia?
Well, first thing I would do is, first talk to your doctor, but I hope he would suggest that you scale back from 10 milligrams to 5 milligrams and see if that helps.
Okay.
And Len, Nazir is taking 10 milligrams all at one time. That I've never heard of. Have you?
No, I haven't either.
Guys, this is Jim Ward. I've got to jump in here. My local GU oncologist has had me on 10 milligrams a day, and it's all in one dose in the morning. I
Excellent.
guess his thought is that it combats the cortisone spike, but I'm going to try to go to 5 milligrams. It's what Dr. Korn supports, but I'm another person who has, thus far, I've been taking 10 milligrams a day all at once.
Okay, well, that's great that you chimed in, Jim. Thank you, because I've never heard of somebody, before I spoke to Nazir today, had not heard of anybody taking 10 milligrams all in one dose. How's your sleeping, Jim? Are you having any issues?
No, I'm always been a pretty good sleeper, so I have to say that, you know, I'm other than having to get up once or maybe twice to urinate, which I don't associate that with the prednisone, my sleep is basically, you know, it's pretty good.
That's very nice. I have another question for Len. How long were you on this combination?
Well, that's a whole long story, but the short answer is the first time I was on it, I was on for 3 months,
Oh,
and I was taking 5 milligrams twice a day, and I was getting some insomnia issues. For reasons which I won't go into now, I stopped after 3 months. Well, I'll tell you, I went on drug holiday, so I just stopped, even though my PSA was still detectable. I just wanted a break. Now, the second time I was on Zytiga was just very briefly for 10 days, just recently in September. And I stopped at that time because I switched to darolutamide. And this may answer some of the other questions some of the guys wanted to talk to me about, Larry in particular. I switched to darolutamide because I had heard that there were fewer cognitive effects, cognitive decline. So that's why I got my oncologist to switch me from Zytiga to darolutamide, and so far I have found that to be true. My mind is clearer. I have less mental fog with darolutamide.
yes. The other question was that I have mental fog as soon as I started taking this combination. I used to be pretty sharp at solving math problems and talking to people, but now just the sharpness is not there. So what do I do here?
Did you hear that, Rick? I lost him.
Yes. What Nazir said that even over the last 3 days, he's noticed a reduction in his mental sharpness.
Yeah, I felt it right away also.
And what does he do to combat it? Well, one thing, Len will talk about some things. Well, Len, why don't you start, and then the rest of us will add other things that we know that can help with that.
Yeah. I started taking Ritalin with methylphenidate. It's the generic name for Ritalin. Methylphenidate is a lot. It's like $5 a month. It's very cheap. And I take a very low dose, but I do find that helps. Of course, in your case, Nazir, if you're experiencing some insomnia, you want to make sure that if you do start taking Ritalin, that you stop by, let's say, mid-afternoon. It's a fairly short-acting drug. It only is active for about 4 hours. But you wouldn't. It's kind of like a cup of coffee.
Yes.
It gives you that mental alertness and pickup. But coffee has a longer half-life in your system. A lot of people can't drink coffee after like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But with Ritalin, I mean, sometimes I take it as late as 6 p.m. and I'll still have no problem falling asleep. So that's one thing you can do. I don't know if anyone else has other ideas. Also, Nazir, regarding the insomnia, I found that. Do you have a medical marijuana license?
Me? No, I don't have one.
You don't? Okay. Because there are certain strains of medical marijuana that induce sleep without giving you a high, without the psychic effects. And I found that to be pretty useful.
Who else has ideas for Nazir with respect to mental sharpness as a result of taking a second-line anti-androgen? No one? No one else to chime in on this?
Well, of course, exercise.
Yeah, of course, exercise. I can chime in, only that I'm going through the same battle right now. I'm like 20 days on Xtandi, and I'm noticing some mental fog for sure. So I don't know what the next couple months are going to bring, but I mean, I do hike like crazy, and that does put me to sleep, Plus, I do marijuana. I do the CBD. I do a vaping pen, which has a little bit of THC. It's a stevia blend. So it's not really, I don't consider myself getting high, but I usually take it when I go to sleep, and it knocks myself out for about 6 hours. So I'd recommend trying that. I don't know. Other than that, exercise for sure.
Yeah,
I'll echo Ken's comment about the exercise. I feel like that helps with a lot. Well, we all know, we sort of all talk about it, but it sure seems to help me.
Nazir is in Canada, so I don't know what the medical marijuana laws are in Canada, or even if it's even accessible to you or not.
100% legal.
Yeah. Recreational approved in Canada.
Oh, it is. Okay, I'll try that. I'll ask someone. Let me ask you another related question to this. Zytiga, how effective is it to keep the PSA down or to keep the disease under control?
It's generally believed to be as effective as Xtandi or any other second-line anti-androgen. They've never run head-to-head trials comparing them, but all the statistics for progression-free survival, overall survival, things like that, they tend to look the same.
Okay.
It's an effective drug.
It is. Okay. Now the other part, I'm due for a Zoladex injection on the 14th of this month. Will the injection plus this regimen, will this cause me, will it compound the issues that I'm having?
What were the issues you were having?
The sluggishness, the memory issues, and
it shouldn't do, Nazir, because you're already on the Zoladex.
Yes.
The Zoladex is just a continuation, so you always, all the way along, you have the Zoladex in your bloodstream. Basically, think of the Zoladex injection as just being a top-up.
Okay.
So it's not like you're adding Zoladex to your regime. Zoladex, for those of you who don't know, is just another LHRH drug like Lupron. Does exactly the same as Lupron. It's just a different brand, and it's injected in a different place, but it's essentially a Lupron-like. It's an LHRH agonist.
Rick, can I say something?
Yes.
To Nazir, because there was a study done not too long ago that showed if you took Zytiga without the first line anti-androgens, like Zoladex or Lupron or Eligard, any of those things, that the Zytiga alone kept the testosterone levels very low. So another thing to talk to your doctor about, you can ask him if it's, can you experiment with dropping the Zoladex and just taking the Zytiga and see if that makes you less, gives you less mental fog and less fatigue.
Okay.
Can
Thank you
you,
for asking that question.
can we send Nazir the reference on that study?
I'll see if I have it. I should have it somewhere.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a good thought. I had forgotten all about that monotherapy Zytiga.
I think I put it on the blog, so I'll take a look.
Yeah, see if it's on the blog, then Nazir, I pointed Nazir to the blog earlier on today, but if it's on the blog, we can get it from there. Okay.
Thank you
Well,
for the question.
we've answered a few of your questions there, and we'll try and find you some ammunition to talk to Levesque
Yes.
about. I mean, that's not a bad idea of Len's, is maybe to try the Zytiga. I mean, given the status of your disease, you know, it's probably not a bad idea. It's a good time to try it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything to Nazir before we move on?
I have a question, and not specifically for Nazir, but anybody on Zytiga. Has anybody else experienced vivid dreams while on Zytiga? I mean, usually, you know, you forget a dream as soon as you wake up, but mine have been very vivid. I remember them for, you know, for a few hours after I wake up, and it's usually about people from my past.
This is Jim Ward. I do think I have a better memory of my dreams.
Yeah, Jake,
Okay.
Jake, I was having such vivid dreams. I kept a dream journal last year when I was on Zytiga because it was so pronounced. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange. I mean, you know, it's just, and
Yeah.
it seems to be as, I don't know if it's because I'm thinking about dying or what, but I dream about people from my past a lot, in strange situations. But you know, it's definitely recognizable people.
Right.
So yeah. And how long did you do that for, Peter?
Well, on and off, I did it for a year.
Okay.
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
in the chat box, I just put a link to Janssen's product approval monograph for Zytiga, and it says, if you look under dosage and administration, once you go there, it says the prednisone dose is 5 milligrams twice a day. So that's the way it was approved.
Yeah, that's what I thought. If you look up whilst you're doing this, if you look up the Latitude trial, which was the trial that led to the approval, the Latitude trial was with 5 milligrams once a day.
I think Latitude was a follow-up. After Zytiga was approved, Latitude was a follow-up trial to see a whole number of different things. You know, like Zytiga, how did Zytiga affect overall survival versus docetaxel? And, you know, was it best to use it with high volume disease, low volume disease, all those sorts of things? But Latitude was what they call a phase 4 trial. So it's a post-approval study of a drug.
All right, well, maybe I had Googled what was the FDA trial that approved abiraterone acetate, and I thought it pointed me to Latitude, but maybe that's where the issue is, because it does.
Yeah.
it does make sense, better sense to me, because I did think it was approved with 5 milligrams twice a day. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first this week that I've heard of with people taking it all in one go. I'd never heard of it taking it all at one time.
Well, there's also a blog post where I summarized a study that compared several different doses of prednisone taken with
Right.
Zytiga. Remember that one?
Yeah, I pointed that out to that's on our blog, and Len blogged it, and I pointed that out to Nazir this morning. So let's see. I'm just looking. Well, we need to move on, but we need to move on. But I'll look at that later. I can't remember what the original trial was. I mean, I've got. Yes.
This is Jim Moore. You know, I know you got to move on. I had looked at this, obviously, because I'm concerned about being on 10 versus 5. But I saw the Janssen website. I read where the dosage and administration was 5 milligrams twice a day if you're metastatic castration sensitive, and if you're castration resistant, and it's 5 milligrams once a day if you're castration sensitive.
That could be. Don't forget, it was approved. It was originally approved only for metastatic castrate resistant. So that's why that approval monograph that I posted, it says 5 milligrams twice a day, because that was for metastatic guys.
Right, but what you posted was that we've got to move on because we can keep going on this. We've got to move on. We'll talk about it later, or we'll come back to it. But we'll just check. But I think the point is that you can do it with 5. You can do it with 10. 10 is probably better than 5, according to the study that Len posted. I've never heard it used taken all in one go, but a couple of the guys are doing it. But if you're having issues, I think you could probably move to less. You should talk to your doc about moving to less prednisone. Larry Fish, were there any specific questions you wanted to ask Len?
Oh, it's nothing special. I'm just curious about, darolutamide as something that I wanted to discuss with my doctor as a possible next step. And so far, I was just curious, like how it's been going. And Len sort of said it's been going seemingly better in terms of the brain fog issue.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I was curious about. Nothing really to discuss further.
Len, are you taking that Ritalin with darolutamide too, or was that only when you're on Zytiga?
No, I've been taking it for years.
So you do think there is still some brain fog even with the darolutamide?
Oh, I guess I've been taking it more for attention deficit, as you can probably tell from time to time on the calls. But yeah, I mean, seriously, I was taking it before I had prostate cancer. But yeah, definitely, I feel it helps if I'm feeling fatigued from who knows what, from the cancer, from my age, from the medications. It definitely helps. But like I said, if you've never taken Ritalin, it's not unlike having a nice strong cup of Starbucks. Only it's shorter acting.
Okay. The one thing I did want to mention on the darolutamide, and we talked about it last week, but for anybody who wasn't on that call, didn't listen to the recording, the most interesting aspect of Len going on darolutamide is the fact that the drug was approved for non-metastatic castrate resistant, and yet Len is metastatic. We know this because he went down, he did the NIH trial with the fancy schmancy scan, PSMA scan, and it showed Mets in your pelvis, right, Len?
Yes.
Pelvis. And so how, you might ask, if he's metastatic, could he get onto darolutamide? Well, it turns out that the standard that they used for whether you're metastatic or non-metastatic was a much lower tech scan. And so if you get scanned with this lower tech device and it doesn't show metastases, even if you have metastases, it doesn't matter. You can still get the drug, which is to me is really silly. But so somebody like yourself, Larry, if you wanted to get onto darolutamide and your bone, the burden of metastasis in your bones is fairly low, it may not show up with an old type of scan. Is it Technetium 99? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
With the old Technetium 99 scan, even though if you did what we recommend you do, which is a much more perceptive scan, sensitive scan, you could have metastasis. So please bear that in mind.
Yes, I do bear that in mind.
Okay. All right. Just moving along because I'm keeping one eye on the clock and Len's time. And Len, I did post something in the chat window that you might find interesting.
Okay.
Joel Blanchette, you also wanted to talk to Len.
Yes, and you led right into the issue. PSMA PET scan at NIH, which Len took in July, and I'm taking in November. And they requested a lot of paperwork from me, prior tests and prior reports, like the pathology report and the biopsy and all that, which I've already sent to them. That included also one multi-parametric MRI, bone scan, and the CT, which were all done within the last couple of years. They, however, requested another CT scan from the current one, so I'll be doing that within the next week here. And then they said they'd give me another, at NIH, they would give me another multi-parametric MRI on the 19th of November and the PSMA PET on the 22nd of November. Did that sound right to you based on what you had done?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what they did with me.
Okay, great. So I'm on the right track then.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yolanda, for some reason, is on medical leave, but she still manages to manage my case from home, I guess. So she was initially on medical leave for a week and then another week, and now it's till 2 December. She said, at least her automatic email says that. But anyway, so yeah, I think I'm all set. Hopefully it'll come through for me, and I'll see. And I appreciate that point that Rick just made, because they based the protocol of the PSMA PET scan is based on the CT PET and the CT scan, which of course are far less sensitive than the PSMA. And so if I do have, like you, some metastatic cancer, the CT, where all my scans, including the multi-parametric MRI, in the past 2 years have been negative. So, and I suspect that the next CT scan I'll be taking this week will be also negative. So I'll be in the same boat you are, where I might have metastatic cancer, but it doesn't show up on the old scans.
Yeah, if I remember, I'm just pulling up my records right now. You're not in, you're not on any treatment right now, is that right?
No, there's no, no, I've never been on any treatment other than the prostatectomy 8 years and 2 months ago. And according to Dr. Anton Arakis at Johns Hopkins, he was at, I saw the report also come through, but he was at the ESMO in 2019, and was a briefer there that briefed on adjuvant therapy for prostate cancer and salvage therapy after prostatectomy. And he's found out that salvage, as long as a PSA is 0.7 or below, salvage is just as good as doing the adjuvant. And so a lot of guys that used to, I know when I went through 8 years ago, they were recommending prostatectomy right away, adjuvant radiation and ADT. But a lot of guys got that and were already cured of prostate cancer, but they didn't know it.
Yeah. So to wait a little bit is not a bad deal. But I guess the issue for you is that if you were going to do the adjuvant, you'd need to do it pretty quickly at this point, right?
No, it's way too late for me for the adjuvant. The adjuvant has to be within 3 to 5 months after surgery.
Well, I'm sorry. If you were going, I didn't mean to say the adjuvant, I stand corrected. If you were going to do radiation, you'd need to do it pretty quickly.
Yes, correct. And that's why the doctor hopes that it's oligometastatic cancer where you can reach it with radiation in a couple places.
Well, but that's a different issue. I mean, the issue of the oligometastatic is a different discussion completely to the issue of salvage radiation, because the salvage radiation is focused on the bed and the pelvic girdle. Okay. And the oligometastatic is focused on wherever they might see lesions.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's good. Thank you.
So oligometastatic means few points of metastasis.
Correct.
But one of the problems is that before you are oligometastatic, you may have micrometastasis, and that might be in your pelvic girdle, in the lymph nodes, maybe even in the bone in the pelvis.
Right.
But very small, so it doesn't show.
Yeah, my doctor who took my prostate out did not check the lymph nodes. He did everything else but the lymph nodes.
Well, I think that if you're considering salvage radiation, now is the time to have that discussion with Antanarakis and see if he thinks you should jump in as soon as you can.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm seeing him on 17 December after he sees my results of the PSMA PET scan, and he's already discussed this on this forum, but he already put me in for that 326 gene test with Foundation Medicine.
Right. Well, so that means that if he put you in for that test with Foundation Medicine, that he has a biopsy, but that's your, we talked about this before.
That's the original biopsy, correct?
Yeah, but again, I if it were me, I would not do it with Foundation Medicine. You get one shot at that. Yeah, and now's not the time to use it.
Right.
Do a biopsy, do a liquid biopsy test, do something else, but I wouldn't use a 7-year-old, 8-year-old sample. Now is not the time. He's not thinking about your pocket.
But I haven't had any other treatments though, other than surgery.
Okay, but then don't get it tested somewhere else. Have him do it in-house.
Right.
But don't use up the one shot that you have at getting your Foundation Medicine test on that.
I hear what you're saying. Yep.
Because otherwise, God forbid the disease comes back, and 2, 3 years from now, you're going to be saying to us, "What do I do? Where am I going to go? How can I get this done?" Because they want $5,000 for it.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to get sequenced, but it's kind of early in the ball game to do sequencing. And if Antanarachis is doing it for his own interest, let him find a way to do it somewhere other than Foundation Medicine, so that you don't have pay issues.
I believe that it's already been done because I got a notice in my chart that the test results were in, but I couldn't view the test results. But I already got the test. He's already got the test on me.
Okay. You heard it here first. But let's see what it shows. Hopefully you get some benefit out of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Anything else on these issues that we're talking about with Joel? Anybody else want to chime in?
Joel, if God forbid they do find a metastatic lesion, they will want, at the NIH, they will want to do a biopsy. And I had a biopsy done by them. And if there's any good to this, it is that they will also be doing genetic sequencing on that biopsy specimen. So it's a freebie genetic analysis. For me, it's a good idea because I was originally diagnosed 5 years ago, but that was when I had my original genetic analysis. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes. And hopefully the results will be coming in within the next few weeks.
Guess it takes a while to get them, but
yeah, like 3 months.
Yeah, wow. But of course, the cancer could have mutated. For me, it's 8 years, so it could have mutated quite a bit since then.
When were you diagnosed?
8.5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, even longer than me.
Yeah, but yes and no. It's because you haven't had any treatment in the interim. Right. So, the cancer generally mutates in response to treatment, Joel.
I see.
But go ahead.
Because of the heterogeneity of prostate cancer, it doesn't usually mutate on its own when it goes to different organs or whatever.
Yeah, it could. I had 7 different genetic mutations right off the bat at MSK when I was first diagnosed, and they did a genetic analysis there.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. But none of which sort of pointed to a different medication for you that you could use to kill the cancer.
No, because none of them were germline. They were all somatic mutations.
Right. Yeah, I've already had a germline test, and NIH didn't request that of me though. But I've had it. And Anton Arakis doesn't like the Decipher test. He says that just measures an expression of cancer. It doesn't measure what he really wanted to know about cancer, the cancer. So I'm not quite following what he's saying there. Maybe you guys can follow that.
Before we get into the Decipher test, Len, the fact that you have a somatic mutation doesn't mean that the drug isn't going to be effective. I mean, if yours BRCA, if you have a somatic BRCA, it means that the PARP inhibitor is still an option for you.
Oh yes, I know. But back in 2014, I'm not even sure olaparib was on the minds of oncologists. It was a little early.
Well, we know it wasn't. I mean, it was on the minds of people like
Professor Bill.
And Professor Bill and some other folks that were working with it. but Bill had to go convince his tumor board at Roswell Park to take it.
And he was
So,
germline.
and he was germline, but it doesn't matter whether you're germline or you're somatic.
Right.
It's still going to be effective. The drug doesn't distinguish between whether the mutation is germline or somatic.
Right.
There's just less cells that it's going to address, because the only cells that express the BRCA mutation, if you're somatic, are the ones in the tumor.
Right.
I know, NIH was doing a clinical trial back 4 or 5 years ago on olaparib and Prosvac. I had one of the members of my group was in that clinical trial there. Of course, Prosvac got failed the clinical trial, but olaparib kept on going, I guess.
Right. But anyway, let's I think in the interest of the other people that want to speak, we got to move on a little bit here. But we wish you we wish you, first of all, a lot of luck with the NIH, and hopefully something will come out of that. But more interestingly, how Dr. Antanarakis uses the results of your sequencing.
Right. Well, I'll let you guys know. Thank you very much for tonight. Thanks, Len.
It's a pleasure. Sure. So what I thought we might do next is talk to Susan a little bit, and then from Susan, we'll segue into Peter's questions for Carl Foreman. But Susan, a lot of folks in this forum don't know you, so I think you should give them a word of introduction and let them know how you are as knowledgeable as you are. And I also want to add that Susan is one of our moderators for our Caregivers call. And, one of the things we've talked about is Susan coming on and talking a little bit about the Caregivers call to the men here who are with us, so they have a better understanding of what we do on that call, because it can be very helpful for your caregivers. And in fact, usually is, because we get very good feedback from the people that have attended that call. And then I asked Susan to talk a little bit about her experience with the PARP inhibitors, and she'll explain why. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay,
We hear you good. Now we can't hear you, but we could hear you just before.
Okay. Is that better?
That's perfect.
Okay. Sorry. So my husband Ron was diagnosed in 2012, and it was metastatic at diagnosis. And so we went through the journey, and he had 5 really good years, and then 6 months of not so good years. But the big thing, I was chatting with Jake a few weeks ago, and and he suggested that I come on the call. The big thing I wanted you guys to know is that, as hard as it was, he did really well. His pain was really well controlled right to the end. He got up and went to the bathroom the last day. I mean, he was continent the whole time. Some of the things I know, I'm not saying it was easy or that, there was no other issues, but, in the big scheme of things, it went pretty well. So, and I thought if you guys even had other questions but the other thing that I found out after he died is that he was very concerned about me, and that he was a burden to me, and I never felt that I was grateful for every single day that we had. And so if you guys are feeling that way, you need to talk to your people who love you, and and clear that up. So so there's some different issues like that. And I didn't know. I just want you guys to know you could ask me anything. You can contact me outside the call. Sometimes it's hard to talk to the person that is your caregiver or working with you. But now, Rick, tell me about the pathway thing. What was the deal with that?
With the PARP inhibitor? Oh,
yeah. You mean the olaparib?
Yes, the olaparib.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, there was some confusion at Johns Hopkins. We also had Dr. Antonarakis, who was wonderful, but there's no support there. That's a whole other story that you guys don't even really need to know about. But he should have gotten the olaparib 6 months before he got it. But when he did get it, at the end of the time he was treated, he felt in the few weeks that he was able to take it that it helped, that he felt better when he started it. He did develop, but this was very close to the end of his treatment. He developed significant anemia, which had not happened before. Maybe that was from the olaparib, but he was only a couple of weeks into it, but his disease was significantly progressed at that point. So we'll never know that, but he felt good on it. He didn't have any side effects that he felt on the olaparib. So I would, I wouldn't hesitate, and I wish that he, had gotten it 6 months earlier, because I feel like it would have, given him some extended quality of life.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Who on the call would like to ask Susan about anything that she said? It must have, or it should have rung a few bells. Did it ring a bell for anybody?
Susan, did your husband have germline BRCA or somatic mutation?
Okay, Rick, you have to help me with that.
Was the gene inherited, or was it just mutation?
I'm sorry. Yes, not. So Antonarakis said that it wasn't inherited. There was no prostate cancer or anything in the family, but there was something that was sort of related to a BRCA thing when he did we finally got the results of the genetic testing. But when he did the spit test through Foundation Medicine, that was all negative. So it doesn't appear to be something that can be passed on to our sons. Yeah. So it just took forever to get the results of the test that was done on the original biopsy when he was originally diagnosed.
Yeah, he actually had a CHEK2 and an ATM mutation.
Right.
Yeah, ATM mutation. That's what I seem to remember. Yeah.
Okay. I have another question for Susan.
Huh?
So I'm glad to hear that your husband wasn't in much pain right up till the end. But I have heard different stories. I have heard of people being in a lot of pain. So I'm just wondering, do you think the difference was in the type of care that he received near the end of his life that kept him free of pain? Or
well, I can tell you what he was on. He was on very low dose morphine, extended release morphine, and then at the end, we had a short stay in inpatient hospice, And in that time, so this was in September, I think, that they put him on. They switched him from like oxycodone to short-acting morphine. So then he was just basically taking morphine, but he was on pretty low dose. When the oncologist originally put him on it, he said, "Oh, the great thing about morphine is you can up it, up it, up it, up it." But he really never got high doses. But the one thing that we didn't learn, and I'm a nurse, and I think they thought that I knew stuff that I didn't know. I do obstetrics and gynecology. It has nothing to do with prostate. It certainly has nothing to do with. So, anyways, there was one thing I knew nothing about. But the one thing that was really important, and when you guys go on long-acting morphine, is that it's not short-acting. So it's really important to keep your blood level up. So you take it usually every 12 hours. Sometimes at some point he might have done every 8 hours, but I think he went back to 12. That you'd have to take it every, he kept trying to skip days. He'd feel really good. Okay, I don't need this anymore. Then he'd stop stuff. He drove me out of my mind, because he would never tell me until, it was too late. But so that's the important thing to know. Even if you want to lower your dose, that's okay. But if you're taking that kind of stuff, you need to take it consistently. But he was, I'm telling you, it was really low doses, right? He was basically taking one Tylenol like twice a day until the year before he died. He had, maybe he just had a high tolerance for pain, but he did pretty good. I can't say it was necessarily I know that he had very good pain control. A part of it is that he had it, without going into crazy details, he had a choice. We're very involved with compassion and choices and end-of-life options, and he had a choice to not have to stay. And despite everything, he basically stayed, right? He was okay. He was, content. He really didn't leave the house much the last couple of months because it was hard for him to get in and out of the car, and he was really weak at that point because of the anemia. But he was not in really in any significant pain, So I just don't want you guys to feel like that road is necessarily the horrible place that you think it's going to be, as much as you don't want to go down that road. Ron always talked about, people talk about people passing instead of dying. We didn't ever understand that, but he always said that was a test he was hoping he wasn't going to be passing, but, so.
We're so grateful that you're on here. Who else has any questions for Susan?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Susan, first of all for coming on tonight, but also Susan, a couple of months ago, spent about an hour on the phone with me. She took time out of her day to talk to me, and I really appreciated that. I still do. So thank you again. I told you then how much I appreciated it, but I really do. So Ron, I do have a question about, you mentioned Ron he got up to urinate on his last day. So he was basically mobile the whole time?
He was mobile the whole time. Now, he had some issues with falling, and he ended up with we got a rollator walker, so he wasn't able to get up without assistance, but the last few months, but he was mobile. I'm telling you, the last day he got up, he went to the bathroom, and right every single day, right he never had one episode of incontinence, and so he was always mobile enough to do that. Our bathroom situation was good, in a good location. We had considered getting a bedside commode, but we didn't really need it. We did have to do a toilet, what do you call that, putting the arm rails on the toilet lift thing, just so he'd be more comfortable. But it's toilet seat elevator or something. I can't even really remember, but but
So they made
and
it easier for them to get up and sit down and get up.
yes, well, we ended up getting the thing that really, really made a huge difference is we got a hospital bed the last couple of months, and the initial one we got didn't have the electric part to raise and lower the height of the bed, but that ended up really helping a lot when we got the one with the raising the height, because then I could bring the bed down to where he could get out of the bed really easily, and then raise it back up to, if we had to change the bed or do whatever, and then raise the head of the bed, it just made that a lot easier. So the way we were able to set the room up, but like I said, he was ambulatory. He was not in terrible pain. He had some discomfort from other things. He had some swelling issues, but in the big scheme of things, he was pretty comfortable. Jake, if there were other things, I can't remember if there's other things that you and I talked about that you felt were helpful, but I was just trying to focus on the key thing.
Right. No, I don't remember everything we talked about either, to be honest. But I was mainly I'm stage 4, Gleason 8.
Right.
I know I'm incurable, so I know sooner or later I'm going to be in Ron's situation, hopefully with little pain as he had. So I was trying to drill you for what it was like, the process of dying, basically. And I hated to ask you that because I know it was painful for you, but that's what I was trying to get at. What do I have to look forward to, I guess, basically is what I'm saying.
Right. And it wasn't like an overnight thing. I mean, he stopped treatment in August, and he had a couple of days. I'm not going to say it was all sunshine and roses, but, he had a couple of days where, okay, this is it. I'm going, this is it. And this was like October, and I called his brothers and, if you want to see him, you better come. And, and then, he's definitely told the kids he's definitely going to make it till Thanksgiving. And, Thanksgiving comes and goes, Christmas comes and goes, New Year's comes and goes, because he was comfortable. He lost function in his hands. He could only do gross movements in his hands. So there were, adaptive things we had to do, but that overall though, it wasn't so bad, and I would have kept them, I didn't feel like it was a burden. I wasn't working at that point, so of course that made a difference. He got up a lot at night to pee, which so both of us had some sleep deprivation, but I did have people helping a little bit with food and stuff, so that was helpful. But but so that as I'm remembering, this is a whole nother, I'm changing the subject here completely because this was something else that that would have helped me a little bit. Ron was a really sex was a really important thing to him, and when we once he was not able to be sexually active anymore, I can't say he complained about it or at all. He never did, or it's just sort of it dropped off the radar. But I think it would have helped me if he was still able to be more affectionate. I think that guys think that their penises are more important to women than they actually are. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just try to remember, if you're not able to, have intercourse, that it probably matters. It doesn't matter as much to your partner as, just being able to try to remember to at least try to be, affectionate with your partner. And I know that was a big change of subject, but I wanted to make sure I got that in.
Oh, well.
So women would respond to just cuddling and kissing and just holding.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what's more important to women. I mean, I can't speak for all women, but you know, I did do women's health care, and I feel like that's that's more important. So don't feel like okay, I can't do anything since we can't have intercourse, so that's the end of everything. It shouldn't be.
This is Peter, Susan.
Hey, Peter.
I agree very much with that last comment. But I have to tell you, the challenge men face is not only erectile dysfunction, it's libido dysfunction.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I mean, my girlfriend teases me. Well, she does more than tease me. She lets me know that, I might as well be a cardboard cutout in terms of how present I am if I kiss her.
Yeah.
The old person, the guy she fell in love with, is not there. As much as I like to think I am, I'm not there. I'm not showing up on that level. And even when I think I have when I do have some testosterone back, I'm still not where I was. And
right.
And it's a challenge. To get that interest up, to try to show up on different levels in terms of expressing affection. And I would amplify your comment. I mean, we have a lot of work to do as guys to get in the game if we do have a significant partner, be it male or female, to be present on that level. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do get the libido thing, because that's a significant problem for women. A lot of times, because it's we just function differently, and we are going way off course here, but just the general, it doesn't have to be anything more than like what one of you guys said. You're walking by and you're just try to touch each other, try to be more present physically. It's not it doesn't even have to be so much of a libido issue as much as trying to reach out and try to be connected physically in other ways. It's like you can't, so you're not having sex anymore, you're making, you're loving your partner, not necessarily, even if you can't have sex with them, you can still show physical affection, and it helps your partner, and it helps you too, to stay connected. So anyways.
Very important thing to remember, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, I thank you too, and I don't think it's off course at all. I think it's a subject that we don't talk about enough on this call. We should probably talk about more, but the guys don't. The guys do want to avoid it, and I'm not sure how sensible that is. And they also have to remember that their significant other is doing a lot of work in the caregiving function on their behalf, and they need to keep it balanced, and they need to give back a little bit. And what you're talking about, Susan, is one way they can give back.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about them. It's about keeping their partners happy, and showing that affection can pay huge dividends. Is there anyone else that would like to say anything in this discussion? It's an really important discussion that we just don't visit often.
I would like to make a comment.
Please, Sylvester.
Sometimes as a patient who has a caregiver, the patient doesn't quite realize that the caregiver may also need some help. I'm speaking primarily about me. I am a caregiver for my sister who suffers from dementia. And thanks to Susan and Debbie and Caroline who took me in, and I learned quite a bit from them to care for my sister. And the other part I learned also is that what should I expect from my sister, the person I'm caring for? I think my expectations were higher than they should have been. Thanks to the group discussions that I learned from Susie and her and the other people on her program, that my expectations were changed in what I thought I was doing for my sister. Mentally, my sister didn't think I was doing what I was doing. The two of us mindset just was not meeting. And that sometimes created a friction between the two of us. But thanks to Susan, Debbie, and Caroline, I learned to back off. And I learned so much information just by listening to them, that being a care provider, what does the care provider expect the patient to do? I had never looked at that as a two-sided coin. And thanks to the information I got from them, I developed a better relationship with my sister. And thank you so much. I can't say enough because I got so much, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvester.
So much welcome. You know, one other thing I want to just throw out there, and this is going to sound crazy to you guys, but Ron and I were together. Our 40th anniversary would have been in July, so we were together a long time. And I would say that the best 5 years of our marriage were the last 5 years. Because I think, as you guys, I'm sure, you know, it's like you stop sweating the small stuff, like all this stupid shit that you fight about or argue about. It's like, you know, or things you worry about, like don't really, your priorities are totally reset. So it can be an okay time.
Wow. Well, let's hear from some of you guys about this.
I wanted to add that at the PCI conference, Rick, that we were at on Saturday, there was a whole segment that was presented by a sex therapist. And he was wildly entertaining. And the majority of the room were men. There were a handful of women, including my wife was there. And he kept emphasizing that, you know, intercourse is not always sex is more than just intercourse, and that women primarily are not as self-satisfying than men are with you know, ejaculating in the woman and everything, and it was just he really made some very interesting points, and it is about touch and having conversation and you know, the intimacy is not just the physical aspect of it. He said that's how you make babies. That's the purpose of intercourse. You know, there's a lot more beyond that that is important. And you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. If any of us have read that, and I had read that in the past, and you know, there's different mindsets, different thought processes between men and women. So.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone
This is
else?
Bob Bordiga.
Yes.
I had an awful time for many, many years dealing with inability to have intercourse after taking some of the drugs that I was taking before I got diagnosed. And it was a matter of identity. I just didn't think of myself as a person at my age that could not perform intercourse. I couldn't accept it. I had a hell of a time with it. And it took me a long time and a lot of conversations before I finally accepted it, and it was a huge relief to do that. And it was a day that I realized that I was able to masturbate, but I was not able to have intercourse. And I felt so guilty that I could masturbate. I said, well, if I can masturbate, why can't I have intercourse? There must be something wrong with me. It was very difficult for me, but I'm so glad I'm past that now.
Boy, and thank you for having the courage to speak up and to tell us that, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to share that on a forum with a bunch of guys, and that's amazing that it's amazing that some of the things that we're hearing on this call. And thank you. Anyone else like to say anything before we move on?
I'll take this opportunity to invite everybody to Speaking Freely.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It is the call actually designed for topics just like this. The less technical, but the more emotional side of our lives. That, as Rick pointed out with Bob, thank you for saying what you did. It's hard for us to, in a group of men, you know, the alpha male, give me the club, show me the saber-toothed tiger, and I'll bring you a coat and a steak, to acknowledge that things aren't the way that, you know, they used to be for us. But the third Thursday of every month at 8 p.m., same channel, we have a men's only call that discusses subjects right along these lines. Please stop by and say hi.
Thank you. That was, and in case for those of you who don't know, but I think most of you do, that was Rich Jackson speaking up, and Rich moderates that. He does a fantastic job moderating that call. So yes.
When is the next call, Rich?
The 21st of November.
Okay.
A week before Thanksgiving, the Thursday before Thanksgiving. Okay, Peter, you had some questions for Carl Foreman.
Yeah, Carl, you still on,
Hi.
Carl?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm going to my buddy Jim St. James. He's not on the call this evening, but I'm going to his oncology appointment on Friday, and he's struggling along. He decided he just couldn't deal with Zytiga at all, so he went off of that. And, they wanted to go on our leader or whatever. Anyway, so I want to get some of your experience with olaparib as a BRCA2 guy. You know, did you have to fight for it? Was it easy to get? What's your experience been on it? Because you're taking it early. You're not doing it as a last resort. You've jumped onto it pretty early on for treatment, as I understand. And I just want to get a feel for, and also what else you've done. Have you done like carboplatin? Have you done you know, anything else that you've done, and what your experience has been to you know, to try to get the attention of the docs?
Okay, sure. The olaparib I started about 9 months ago. I had mentioned it to my oncologist. He had not told me about it, based upon my research and some guidance by Rick, actually, and then talking with Dr. Susan Dumchek at the Abramson Cancer Institute in Philadelphia, and she highly recommended that I go on to the PARP inhibitor as a result of my genetic testing that showed that I was BRCA2 positive. At the time that I had my meeting with her, I was still on Zytiga. I had just had my robotic prostatectomy in November. I was on Zytiga for 3 months prior to having the surgery, and continued it for 3 months subsequent when my PSA started to rise. Right after surgery, my PSA was 0.12, but within 2 months it went to 0.55, and my oncologist said, we're going to have to change treatments because you're failing. And with the olaparib, what he had to do is that typically it's not offered to individuals unless you're part of the clinical trial for olaparib. And he was able to go directly to the source, I think it's AstraZeneca, and get what is called an off-label approval for me to receive the medication. And it didn't take too long. I think it took about 2 weeks for him to get through the paperwork and get the approval for that. And my insurance, actually, there was no extra out-of-pocket. There was no out-of-pocket, actually, and still is no out-of-pocket for the medication. And I take 400 milligram tablets twice a day. And so that's how I started on olaparib and continuing on the olaparib. And I gave my story also again yesterday to the Dr. Pienta from Johns Hopkins, and he was very, I wouldn't say surprised, but I guess he was happy for me for the fact that it's been this period of time that my PSA has been undetectable. And following and hopefully in Professor Bill's footsteps, to the extent that he was on olaparib for 3 years. So I hope that I will get that, or maybe the PSMA, as was widely discussed at the forum, as well as always on this forum, that in the not too distant future, that could be a real benefit for all of us going forward. So side effects of olaparib include some anemia, and red blood cell counts are somewhat below normal. White blood cell counts are okay in range. My primary care doctor, when I mentioned to him about the blood work, he said, "You're really far away from us needing to do anything for this anemia that you're experiencing on the medication." So the other thing that has happened to me in the past, I think it was May or June, I had a pain in my left leg and I felt a lump, and my primary care doctor said, well, we should do a Doppler. And when I had the Doppler done, the technician, and I kind of knew there was something wrong, because the technician asked me to wait in the waiting room as opposed to say, okay, you can go home. And I was told that they found a partial blood clot. If it was more than a partial blood clot, they would have told me to go immediately to the hospital, which did not happen. So I was then soon thereafter put on Eliquis, a blood thinner, and I've been told that this is going to be somewhat of a chronic issue for me for the blood clots. Although the blood clot that I've had in my leg, it hasn't totally disappeared, but it has dramatically improved over the past.
Let me just cut in a little bit in the interest of time. Blood clotting is a known side effect, Peter, of taking the olaparib. But what I wanted to mention to you was that we attended a small private seminar on Friday night about how to get authorizations. It was given by Janssen, and it was about supporting appropriate payer coverage decisions. And I think it wasn't actually AstraZeneca that Carl's doctors went to, but they prepared what's called a prior authorization, which they submitted to his insurance company, because that's the pattern. In order to get an off-label approval, that's the pattern that they, or the protocol they have to follow. And the way that that prior authorization is phrased is critically important. Now, in Carl's situation, since he'd failed second-line anti-androgens already, he may have been in a stronger position than Jim might be. At the same time, we've known several guys, including Ron, God rest his soul, and Dominic, and others. I can think of over half a dozen, all who have gotten their insurance company to approve the olaparib. But I don't know how early in the process. That's the key with Jim. But the big issue is whether the medical oncologist will take the time and has the savvy to prepare an effective prior authorization form.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be interesting because, you know, we're out here in the hinterland and we've got a general, I mean, Jim does have an inroad with, he's got a doctor at UCSF, but she hasn't jumped on the olaparib bandwagon at all. You know, she's talking about Erlita right now. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of sense that early olaparib is better than waiting as a last resort. And, that's what I kind of sense. And but I have nothing to go by.
Let me suggest something on that score, and you may well be right, which is to try and create a conversation that involves the BRCA folks at UCSF. I think we've talked about this before when Jim McCoy was on the phone, and you can get to the BRCA folks, Pamela Munster. You can get to Pamela Munster through Jim McCoy. But if she thinks that there's any percentage to early treatment of olaparib, then she should be talking to Jim St. James's UCSF medical oncologist about how they might be able to bring that about. I mean, there's only two academic BRCA centers in the country. One is at UCSF and the other's in Philadelphia at Abramson, which is the one that Carl Foreman attends.
What about this Heather Chang up in Washington? She seems to be pretty on top of it. She and her husband for BRCA.
I mean, I don't know what she's doing. I do know that she's the one that's behind the gentleman's study.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't know what she's doing up there. But I don't think I mean, why invent the wheel? Why go to somebody we don't have a relationship with when we do have a relationship with the UCSF BRCA Center, and we do have a doctor, and we do have a doctor, a GU Med Onc at UCSF.
Okay, I've been talking to Jim McCoy. He was the one that put me on to Dr. Chang up in I haven't talked to her directly, but I've looked at a couple of her videos and stuff, and she seems to be interested in this. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting.
That's where McCoy's going. You know, the problem with McCoy is, to me, well, I won't go there.
No, it's okay.
I guess what I would say is the simplest way, and what Jim can do effectively, is he can reach out to Pamela Munster so that Pamela Munster and the doctor at UCSF can have an issue, can have
that sounds like a good game plan.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, if you can get to Chang and he thinks Chang is helpful, that's good, but you got to be able to get to Chang and then get Chang to talk to the UCSF people.
Yeah,
and,
that's crazy.
And the local people, and that just makes it more complicated.
Agreed.
And just to add, I mean, my treatment regimen, I also did have Provenge in March of this year, so nobody really can quantify what effect it's had overall, but hopefully it's been positive.
All right, we're gonna move along because we got another 20 minutes. We've got a few people to visit with. The next person we'd like to hear from is a little bit about Bob Bordiger's success. Bob, why don't you just fill the guys in on your background because they may not remember, and tell them what you've been doing the last couple of weeks.
Okay, sure. In June, early June, I was diagnosed from a biopsy with Gleason 9 and at the worst, and then a couple of 8s and 6s. Then I went and researched whether to go on to have a prostatectomy or to do radiation, and had a bunch of meetings with different medical oncologists and radiologists, etc., radiation oncologists. Anyway, decided to do the prostatectomy. I started Lupron in July, which an MRI showed it very effectively reduced the size of the tumor. It was bulging at the capsule, and so it was able to reduce it to within the capsule. On Tuesday, I had the offending organ removed. I had my prostatectomy, and also my lymph nodes were removed and biopsied. I had clear margins, but they did find a very small amount of cancer in one of the lymph nodes, less than 1 millimeter, low down. I'm going to go back to see the doctor on Wednesday to have the catheter removed and to discuss what to do next. But I imagine what I'm going to be doing is, when a month or so has passed, to have some the PSA tested and to monitor to see if I have a period of no cancer showing up for a while, and maybe do another PET aximum scan or PSMA or something like that, and take it from there. One of the things that I was thinking about was going on to hormone therapy as a way of delaying, if I'm going to have a recurrence, which is more likely than not, of helping to delay it. Now, my doctor doesn't think that I should do that unless there's some evidence of the PSA going up a little bit. But he said it's my choice to make. So that's one of the things I was grappling with. And I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about what I should be thinking about or what to expect or anything like that. I'd be pleased to hear them.
Peter? Are you still with us, Peter?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have any comments right now on this one. So.
The whole point of having the surgery is that after the surgery, you don't need to take any of the ADT products until you have a rise in the PSA. You really should follow that. Why take those the ADT products, which make your body just miserable, when you don't need them? Yes, 2 years later, I had to start them because it came back, but it may not come back. So why start taking drugs like that when it may not come back? Wait for your PSA to start rising. As long as you're less than 0.01, you're having it tested every couple of months at the most. You should not worry, and because you can start taking the next step as soon as it starts to rise. Well, that's my thoughts.
Thanks,
right.
Jeff.
That's what the doctor thinks too. My only feeling about it is that there was a study that I saw that showed that when the hormones were taken, immediately after a prostatectomy for a period of 2 years, that the likelihood of recurrence dropped from about 50-50 to only 10% within a 5-year period. And I thought, well, if that could possibly, if I was going to get a recurrence again, if that could possibly delay it, what I'm trying to do is outrun this thing, you know. That appealed to me. But on the other hand, treating something that you don't have before you have it also doesn't make sense in that regard. So I'm prepared right now to follow the doctor's recommendations and your recommendations too about it. But I just wanted to explore it a little bit more.
Well, you know, you raise a very interesting discussion on the benefits of doing something prophylactically, which is what you're considering. Gleason 9s are touchy. You were a 4+5? I cannot recall.
Yes, 4+5.
And so, you know, they shouldn't be fooled around with. And my experience in working with men has been that the men that are more conservative early on and do more rather than less seem to get better results. The men that I've seen wrestle with recurrence have often, but not always, been the men that got off their treatment sooner rather than later. Now,
right.
The fact that there is involvement in one lymph node really indicates that the disease did spread.
That's right.
We don't know where else it might be. It's the issue of micrometastasis. And I chose to do a lot of treatment because my doctors thought that there was micrometastasis for a bunch of reasons. And I might not have needed to do any of that treatment. And if I had waited, I fear that I might be wrestling with the disease today, but I'm not. I have durable and continuous remission. So, and there have been studies, as you point out. So the fact that you got 4+5 disease, the fact that there is disease in the lymph nodes, even though you have clear margins, would seem to say, well, conservatively, yeah, let's do some pelvic girdle radiation and let's do some ADT. You know, not everybody would agree, including people on this call, not just Jeff. But my feeling.
What's the disadvantage of doing the radiation?
Well, it can have side effects. It had, you know.
Well, other than the side effects, I mean, in terms of, I mean, it's like I feel like I have certain tools available to me in a certain order to be used. You know, prostatectomy, radiation therapy, hormone therapy, you know, second line androgens, anti-androgens, and stuff like that. And it goes in a certain order, basically. You know, if I could spread it out over a longer period of time and use one and then another one later and then another one later and another one later, I might be able to extend my life, you know, 15 or 20 years. I'm 70, by the way.
Right.
But I had a nice conversation with my 97-year-old mother this morning who was doing just great. So, you know, there's a possibility that I could make it longer if it wasn't for this.
Okay, well, God bless her.
Well, that's what I did. That's what I did is I waited for the indication and I moved on it. You know, I made it 11 months post-surgery and then I did my radiation when my PSA was indicating it was time to move again. And then I made it another 2 years before I had to move on a couple of lymph nodes. I mean, so for me, I'm also Gleason 9. For me, I knew from the get-go that this was going to be an ongoing thing. And rather than try to jump the gun and do something prophylactically or do something ahead of the game, I just watch my PSA. And in fact, as we speak, I'm waiting for my PSA results from this morning to show up because I know I have some creep. And I've gotten 2 lab results so far in the last half hour, but neither of them show my PSA. They're showing my blood counts and stuff. But I know I'm going to have to pull the trigger again next year. I know it's going to come up, but I'm not chomping at the bit to try to do it beforehand.
Why did you rule out the possibility that you could have continuous and durable remission?
I mean, I would love that. I haven't ruled it out, but
no, not now. But right. You ruled it out right after your surgery. You said, "Well, I'll wait." Now, I don't think you can get it now. I think you're in for treatment for as long as you can get. You're around, and hopefully that's going to be a very, very long time. But having said that,
when I had surgery, it was already in my seminal vesicles. I mean, the cat was out of the bag; it was on the move. So
okay,
I mean, so that was my take.
But the fact that it was in your seminal vesicles doesn't mean that you couldn't have nailed it at that time. You weren't beyond nailing it at that time. When I say nailing it, not curing it, but getting a continuous and durable remission so you never had to continue with all the subsequent treatment that you've had to do. You see, this is we don't know, but this is my point, Bob. Somebody like Peter says, okay, I'm going to wait and respond when it happens. We've got research that says, no, don't wait and respond. Do something right away. We've got other research that says, well, if you wait and you do the radiation a little bit later, it's not going to make such a big difference as the adjuvant. And we don't know. We don't know. But all I'm saying is I just look at the men who have waited. And the men who wait seem to deal with more issues. And we were talking earlier on in this call about, well, it makes no difference. Joel Blanchett was saying, well, I'll wait until it gets to 0.7 as long as I do my salvage radiation or early salvage radiation. By the time it's 0.7, won't make a difference. Yeah, there are studies that say that, but there are other studies that say you do better if you jump in and nail it right away. Now, you've got side effects.
I also feel that I'm in better health now to be able to withstand the side effects of whatever treatment. And so if I do something sooner rather than later, I feel like I'll be able to handle it better. That's another factor for me.
You know, it's a very difficult one to answer. We know you're going to have some significant side effects from the any additional radiation, from the hormone therapy. Jeff Marchi is absolutely right. But the alternative to that is having to be on hormone therapy for the rest of your life and dealing with it in that way. And not that you might not have to do that anyway, but there's a chance right now that you might not. If you had metastasis in your bones, I think it would be a slightly different issue. But I don't think there's a right or a wrong, and I think you've heard good arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
By the way,
you can do intermittent therapy too. You can do intermittent like I have and just going on and off.
Hold on. First of all, Peter, and then Jeff Marchi. Go ahead, Peter.
You can do intermittent hormone therapy and go on and off and still have a life, and that's not a bad approach to things too.
You mean like 3 months or 6 months at a time or something like that, or
6
or
months?
2 years at a time?
No, it's usually I've gone on and off 3 times in the past 5 years. Usually it's about a year. The first time I went a year and a half, I think, but a year, something like that, 9 months.
Yeah, because I've already been on on Lupron for 3 months. In fact, I'm still getting. It's almost 4 months now, and I'm still getting hot flashes. But it's very tolerable. I don't really, have an issue with it. But if I was going to go back, do an intermittent, would I go back on Lupron or do something else, or just something to talk to the doctor about?
Probably talk to the doctor, but usually you go back on Lupron as long as you're tolerating it and you're not resistant to it. You go back on it.
Right.
Jeff?
Yeah. Well, he said he's willing to do it if I want him to.
Jeff?
Yeah, the comment about radiation, I had it for 6 weeks and had absolutely no side effects at all. So I guess it really varies a lot how much radiation affects people. And I had forgotten about the Gleason being so high and also that it had spread. So I would think more deeply about whether keeping up with the Lupron might make sense. You've heard all different points of view. I think you're right in between there, where it may work, may be better, it may not. If you're not getting too bad at hot flashes, I got terrible hot flashes.
Yeah, no, they're not bad.
And then,
I mean, the way I look at it is I'm at war with this thing, and I made a major attack on it a few days ago with the surgery, and strike while the iron is hot. If it makes sense, that's kind of maybe that's not a scientific way to approach things, but I wanted to take an aggressive approach to dealing with it if I could.
Yeah, let me weigh in with one other comment here about how you structure this. Is that when I did radiation, and the standard game for follow-up radiation is they just assume that the cancer's in the prostate bed. They don't really know. They just radiate the prostate bed, the pelvic girdle, and so forth, which is what they did with me. But then after that, when my PSA started climbing again, something was on the move, and then it had gone into my abdominal lymph nodes. But in order to get the scan for that, I had to be off of ADT. So that was another argument for going on and off ADT, was to be able to get into one of the clinical trials to do the scan. In a year from now, the scan might be approved, and you might not have to do that. But for me, I had to be off of all ADT in order to get the clinical trial to do the scan to find where the metastatic lymph nodes are. So that's another argument for intermittent.
Right, yeah. and is that a PET PSMA or a PET aximum or a different kind of a scan that you have to be off of the
PSMA? PET PSMA, gallium-68.
Let's not get into the scanning discussion right now because it's getting towards the end of the call. It's
okay, sorry.
And I think we're jumping the gun in your case. I think Peter's point is that intermittent might be down the road for you, but the first part of intermittent is at least 12 to 18 months to begin with. So,
right.
We're getting a little far ahead of ourselves, and I just have to rein you back in. I've still got a couple of guys that I just want to touch base with, and but I think the point for you, the point for you, Bob, is to weigh up which way you want to go. You could easily wait, or you could jump in right now. And there's lots of arguments on both sides. I know what I personally would do. It's not, but I'm not advising you to. I know what I would do, but there are other people on this call who wouldn't do it and didn't do it. I think that's where you are, and I can also happy to connect you to anybody that's on the call.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Jerry Pelfrey, are you still with us? I think we may have lost Jerry, but I think that he was just going to tell us that he's started his radiation to debulk the primary at Mayo. I'll reach him later and just check and make sure that everything is good. But I seem to recall that that was right around now. Jeff, you just wanted to mention that the CBD worked really well for you.
Yeah, I had to take Depo-Provera to stop the hot flashes.
Right.
And they were still coming every 3 or 4 hours, but just not as intense. And then I started taking that darolutamide, and I sweated so bad the first night. And that was the same night the guy was telling us about CBD. So I went to the store and bought some. I've been taking one a day, 20 milligrams, and I have the most I get is I get a little bit warm, and it goes away. It has been fantastic. In fact, I mean, I was getting just every 2 hours major hot flashes, and I'm not getting any. So CBD, I'm taking 20 milligrams, and it just seems to work. But though it is expensive, it's about $3 a pill.
Okay. Hey, if it works, that's the cheapest $3 that you're spending, isn't that right?
I love it. I just don't mind at all.
Okay.
All right.
Hey,
I'll
can I
let you
ask,
go on that.
ask the brand? Is it possible to ask the brand? You know, I understand CBD does work for hot flashes, but I was wondering what the brand might be.
Yeah, because it's all different.
I'm using one called Care by Design. Is the name of the company, Care by Design.
All right.
Same initials as CBD.
Well, thank you.
Care by Design. Did you guys get the
Care,
by
not
Design?
care. He said pair. Or was it care? I got it wrong. C-A-R-E.
Right,
Yeah.
C-A-R by
Right.
Design.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think there is a lot of variance in the brands. There's somebody right here where I live that's just opened a CBD shop just down the street. Well, I say just 20 miles down the street in the shopping center there. Guys, if you're suffering with hot flashes, throw a little bit of money at this 20 milligram Care by Design and see if it helps you. I mean, but you all know everybody's different. So some people are going to react to some things. Listen, I do remember that Mr. Marchi got some relief for quite a while with a glass of ice water. Isn't that right?
Yes, quickly drinking a whole glass of ice water could stop a hot flash. But that's a lot of water.
It can also give you a brain freeze, can it not?
True, but it's so nice when every 2 hours I don't have to do anything. I don't feel anything.
Yeah, and then of course there are some of you guys who have problems with your waterworks, and so you're going to be up peeing if you do that. So that's another downside to the ice water. You don't have to worry about that, unless of course you take. I didn't ask. You don't take that 20 milligram Care by Design with a glass of ice water, do you?
No, just a couple of sips.
Okay.
Is that with or without THC?
It's without.
No, that one has 1 milligram.
Yeah, it has to be traceable amounts in order to sell it without in order for you to get it without a license.
Well, in California, but I'm sure there's other brands. It's just that's what they've got, the best one I found in the pot store.
Okay.
All right, great.
Okay.
But you can't get high on 1 gram.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I am going to try something this week if I got the time tomorrow that we haven't done before, but we've created a whiteboard on our forum, on our website. And one of the reasons we did it is so that you could keep talking to each other about these subjects on the whiteboard. So you have to sign on or sign in. I think you have to have a WordPress account to order to use the whiteboard. And you can start topics, whatever you want the topics to be. You could start a topic on CBD or hot flashes or what have you. What I'm going to use it for is to post the all of the chat board information for the guys that were on the telephone and couldn't get to see what was on the chat board. There were links that were being posted and some other comments. And so I'm going to try and do this tomorrow. We'll see if it works. But if you're at all interested, you can visit the forum, the prostate cancer forum, later on in the week. There are several forums. This will be on the prostate cancer forum, and you can see what was discussed on the in the chat board during the call if you weren't online. Okay. Did I get to everybody? Is there anybody who had anything they wanted to say that I missed?
Well, this is Peter. This is new information. I'll give you hot off the press. I did my PSA this morning. I just got my results 10 minutes ago. I have a great lab that can it just sends them to me right away. So as I suspected, I'm at the I'm showing up again. I was 2 months ago. I was 0.14, and now I'm 1.03 in a 2 month span. So I'll keep tracking it, and as I suspect, I'll probably need to do something after the first of the year, is my guess, or sooner. I'll talk to Turner and see what the game plan is. Whether I do a second gallium-68, I don't know. Maybe that's the way to go first and see where the move is. But just letting you guys know, I'm okay with it. I don't have a lot of anxiety. I kind of suspected something was on the move, so I'm one of those guys in the fast doubling time arena.
You sure are. Peter, what is the what's your testosterone level?
345.
Okay, so that's staying pretty constant.
Yeah.
Okay. And that will mean you got, I mean, assuming you wait another month or so, how long will you have got off of this holiday?
About a year. Yeah, I stopped Zytiga on New Year's Day. So
okay,
a little bit less than a year. Yeah.
And how much did you get the first time?
Well, I made it 11 months between surgery and radiation, and then I made it almost 2 years between radiation and proton radiation.
But I mean, this isn't the first time you've taken a holiday, is it?
No, it's the third time.
And how much did you get? How long were you off in the second period?
Almost 2 years, just about 2 years.
Okay, so you were off 2 years the first time, and this time you got about a year.
Yeah, well, I was an oddball case because I was on right away, so I made it. I was on for 9 months before I did surgery, and then I went off for 11 months and then back on again.
Right.
Yeah. So
but what I'm saying is, the information I'm trying to get for the guys is, you've done how many times have you stopped hormone therapy? Twice or 3 times?
Once, twice, 3 times.
3 times. Now, the first time you stopped hormone therapy was right after your surgery.
Right after the time of surgery, right.
Right. And you decided you didn't want to go back. So that's not really sort of intermittent. But
Right,
then you came back and you decided you were going to go back on hormone therapy. And then you were on it for a while and you stopped. How long were you off of it that first time before you had to go back on?
2 years.
2 years.
Just about 2 years.
And the second time you got about 1 year out of it.
Yeah, about 11 months now. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, by the time so that's kind of what we've heard. You get the most the first time, a little less the second time.
Right.
But 2 years the first time, 1 year the second time, still has been plenty enough time for you to start feeling pretty good again, huh?
Yeah, testosterone came back at 3 to 4 months each time.
Okay.
So
Well,
anyway, lots of thoughts.
Probably, the only thing I would say right now in your thinking is that probably needs something systemic. That the oligometastatic is a bit of a whack-a-mole, right?
Right. Yeah, it might be time to do chemo. I don't know. This could be some discussion. Yep.
We're here to.
Anyway, yeah, I know. Sorry to drop this bomb at the end here, but as I said, it actually came in on my email as the meeting was going on. In fits and starts.
Thank you for letting us know. Anybody else want to say anything to Peter before we close out? Okay. Well, good luck with Jim St. James too, and I have a whole pamphlet that was given to me on this getting these payer coverage decisions, and there's a real expert at Janssen that we can access, so we can talk about that. All right, everybody. The next meeting will be Tuesday, the 12th, a week tomorrow. Don't forget to vote if there's anything worth voting on tomorrow. And we will stay warm wherever you are, and we'll talk to you soon. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good luck, Peter.
Okay.
All right.